So I want to walk you through this whole project, kind of how I get from my idea to a finished project. So this is really a tutorial for you just to sit back, see how I do all of this, and then there's other tutorials of just, really quick, here's an actual skill. But I want to walk you through an entire project. So this is just a viewing tutorial, okay? So this is the one that I found online. If I go ahead and check in my Lomography website, that you guys have looked through, I found this one that I really liked, and I was inspired by all this texture, and I liked how there was this like path leading into a really bright spot, and I liked that the colors were oversaturated. So those are the three things I picked out: texture, a leading line, really saturated colors, and those are the three things I would write down. Now when you go into this website, remember you can go into photos, and while you're in here you can click on tags, and there's all kinds of things. So I had picked double exposure. And when I was in here, as I scrolled through, this is where I found it. And there's lots of tutorials on how to do all of these things, but this is just kind of how I go from idea to finished product. So now if I jump into Photoshop, what I did was I just opened this in Photoshop. I just downloaded it and saved it so that I could just refer back to it really easily without being on the website. So you decide how you want to do that. And then when I finished, let me show you my finished one, is this one. And I'm looking for those three things. Do I have texture? Yes, I do. Do I have some leading lines? Yes, I do. And do I have saturated colors? Yes, I do. Now, it's not the exact same things that are here, but it doesn't have to be. I'm just picking out three particular things. I didn't need to use flowers. I used clouds. I didn't need to use this bridge and tunnel. I just used a sidewalk. And I didn't need to use the orange. I just needed some saturated colors. And so I chose blue as my piece instead. And it absolutely fits my three criteria that I gave myself. So let's jump into Photoshop, and I want to show you how I really put this together. So these are all of my layers that I made through that, and that's what we're going to do. And then I just have my two pictures. So these are stacked on each other right now just because that's how I kind of started. But I opened up this picture that I had in Lightroom of some clouds, and then I also had this picture of a path that I edited in Lightroom. So you are welcome to edit your pictures first in Lightroom, but you really need to be in Photoshop in order to merge these two together. So I did some split toning here, some color grading, and then I just saturated my colors with these clouds. Okay, so what I did was I went to my path picture, this one. So I'm just going to jump back into where I started, which was here. Okay, and I had my clouds picture, which was here. So I'm going to select all. Remember that shortcut is Command A for all, copy, Command C, and then jump over to this one and paste, Command V. So I have my cloud picture here, and we're going to play with our layer modes first. So I'm just going to move this around. I might transform, Command T, and shrink this down. Drop it in the top here. Looks good. All right. Now I'm not going to worry that it's not the right size and doesn't fit this bottom. I don't even care about that right now. What I do want to do is go over here to my layers, and I want to play with my layer modes. Now layer modes are just different blending styles, and as I go through and hover over these, they are going to change, and I'm going to see how these two layers mix together. And some are going to be great, and some are going to be absolutely terrible. So I would recommend you really kind of scroll through and take a good look and see what effect you want. So I really liked this one, the lighter color, and I liked, where was it? What's the one I actually used? Well, we'll go with that one. Oh, here we go. Yeah, I guess it's lighter color. That's the one I'm using. So now that I have changed that mode on this layer, I'm still going to move that over and see where it's going to go. So I'm okay with that. I don't like that these people get washed out in the clouds, so we're going to go fix that. I also have a really sharp edge over here, and I'm going to fix that too. So I'm in my layer. I'm going to turn this into a mask because a mask allows me to take things out and add things back in. I'm going to my brush tool. My mask right now is white, so I'm going to paint with black over here. I'm on my brush tool. I'm on my mask. And let's shrink this down. As I'm painting this out, I can get rid of some of these edges of things I don't want, and they're going to be nice and sharp. If I turn that mask on, you can see that's the part I just painted out. Now over here, there's a little bit of edge. I want this to be a softer blending thing. So on my brush, I want to make sure the hardness is down. If it's up, it's going to be a sharp edge. I want it to be a fuzzy edge. So I take the hardness down. And I'm actually going to take the opacity halfway. What that's going to let me do is it's going to let me blend really softly in between here and gently buff that out. Ever so softly. Here, I'll do it up here so you can see up here. I can gently take some pieces out. If I don't like that, I switch to white and I put it back in. Right, so let's go to 100% back on my opacity, just so you can see that again. If I want to erase something, I make that into black and I can take it out. I flip it back into white and I paint it back in. Just be careful you're always on the mask and not on the picture. If you're on the picture, you will actually paint white. Okay, undo, Command Z. Don't do that. Jump over here to the mask. All right, now that looks great. I actually want some more colors in there. So here's a cool trick. When you've done all of this masking and you like something, copy that whole layer. So I'm going to do a Command J, and now I have 2 of them. And I can move it around and like double up my clouds with very little extra work. Or what if we changed the color of some of these clouds? So you can tell I'm over here on the picture, not on the mask. I'm on the picture, and I'm going to Image, Adjustments, and I'm going to change the hue saturation. Now, if I had done my adjustments over here, it would have changed all of my layers, and I want just this one. So I'm going to slide the hue. Ooh, and you're going to see this one layer is the one that's changing. So I'm going to do something a little bit softer. And I'm going to take my saturation down. So it has some color, but it's not going to be really intense. I want a little bit like a greenish sort of color. Sure. And I can decide how intense or soft that's going to be. Okay, so play with it till you get something you like. Who knows? Sure, let's just go with that. Okay. So I have another layer of color. Again, I can move that around and see what that's going to do. It's almost black and white because I took the saturation down so far. I'm okay with that. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to adjust the mask for a little bit more clouds down below. So one more time, I can do a Command J if I want even another color. I could even Command T and make this one even bigger. And I'm going to slide this around. Let's do some other clouds so it funnels in. I want some really thick clouds. Hit return. I'm going to do that Image, Adjustment, Hue, Saturation. Let's give it a different kind of color just to layer up some things. And I can decide how saturated or dull I want that to be. So let's just boost some colors in there and see what that's going to be like. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, a little intense. Take it down. All right, so I like that. Again, my people got covered. I'm going to that mask. I'm going to the brush tool, and nothing's happening. Oh, wait, I'm on the wrong one. Let's switch that to black. There they are. Now I can really clean this edge out. All right, I am pretty happy with my colors. It's not as saturated as I want it to be, but I might kick that back into Lightroom. Let me show you how to do that. Oh, one last thing. If you want to just kind of take out a little bit of one area, I'm going to stay up here. I don't want so much of this teal over here, so I'm going to change my brush back to something a little bit softer. And I'm going to make this brush nice and large so that it just goes out subtly. And I'm just going to gently paint some of this. Those layers mix a little bit more. Like, ooh, fancy, fancy. If I took out too much, I just switch that back into the white and again, gently just build it back up. This is the wonderful thing about the mask. You can really change the amounts of each layer showing. I could have put some clouds down here on the pathway. I'm just thinking about, do I have texture? Do I have some color saturation? And do I have a leading line? And I do. So now here's a great thing. We are going to leave these layers as they are, but we're going to kick it back into Lightroom and we're going to crop it and really boost our colors as a final thing in Lightroom. I could do it here in Photoshop, but I want to show you how you can go back and forth between these two programs. So in order to save this out, I don't want to just do a save because it could save over my other picture. So I'm going to do a save as, and I'm going to save it. I'm going to call this Mixie. Sure. And I'm going to make it as a Photoshop document. And I'm just going to save it to my desktop for right now. I say, okay. Now let's jump into Lightroom. you get that alert, it's just saying it can't bring over something you had saved on your Command C, and that's okay. I've already copied and pasted what I needed. It's saving here, so it's going to take just a second. Jumping into Lightroom. This is my last one, right? My other practice that I showed you guys. But I'm going to bring in my new Mixie. See, here's Mixie. Here's clouds. Here's Mixie. Review for import. There's Mixie. I like that one. I'm going to say add one photo. And there's Mixie. Okay, so I have not cropped this. It's not going to fit on a sheet of paper when I send it to the printer. So I'm going here. I'm going to change it to my 4x5, which is the same as 8x10. And then I have to decide, you know, what do I want? Do I want more people? Do I want more clouds and background? Do I want this to be a zoomed in picture now that I've done all of that? And I can think about my inspiration photo and what I want to do to make it seem more similar to my inspiration. So I'm going to give it more sky. And then I'm going to go to my adjustments, and there it's cropped. Remember, if you make a crop and you don't like it, just go back and like recrop it again and say, well, I don't really like that. I want it more clouds. Whatever you want to do. Okay. Now, one thing, I want a little bit of a vignette, and I want this a little more saturated. So I want to saturate these together. So I'm going to come down here and I'm going to check vibrance. Not bad. I'm going to check saturation. Ooh, I like that. And maybe I don't want quite so much in my yellow, so I can go just into yellow and say, but yellow, come on back down. You got a little bit too much. There we go. So now I have my color saturation, my leading lines, I have my texture. Maybe I also want a vignette, so let's go down to our effects. There is my vignette. Maybe I want a little bit of an edge. Ooh, I like that. Maybe I want it to be less feathered, so it's a little bit sharper. Make it bigger. You decide, okay? See what you like. What's going to work well for your picture. I like all of that. Maybe I even want even more texture. So maybe at the final end, I boost my texture or I boost my dehaze. All of that I usually probably would have done before I layered them together, but that's a nice thing about bouncing back and forth between these two programs is that I can do and put it all together in Photoshop, and then I can come back here and I can just touch things up in Lightroom. Now in Lightroom, it is one single image. It is not in layers. So if you wanted to fix a single layer, you would need to do that here in Photoshop, so I can just click between these layers and make the adjustments. I like to leave both of them open just in case I want to make another change here. I could then save it again and open it again in Lightroom. I have my final picture. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to kind of compare it to what my inspiration was. If I am good with everything and I'm either here in Lightroom or Photoshop, remember, you just want to right click and you want to export this out somewhere so that you have it saved as a final image ready to print. If you happen to edit in Photoshop and you want to finish kicking it out from Photoshop into a final saved document, you can do that through Photoshop too. Just remember to right click and flatten this image first so that it is one single layer. It is easier for me to open it up when it's one layer instead of the whole stack for grading. And then you're again going to do a save as, but make sure you save this one